My name is Thomas Hare. I'm the Chief Content Officer of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves professionals and leaders in the performance-driven and direct-to-consumer marketing world. We'd love to welcome you on behalf of the PDMI team, CEO John Yarrington and myself, to PDMI West here at the Hard Rock Hotel San Diego this week. We appreciate everybody being here. We appreciate the hotel for its hospitality and its efforts to put on a great show. So thank you to the Hard Rock. I'd also like to thank our team for working so hard to bring to this week's events to you. It's always a tough road to get here for our team, and we really grind through it. It's been a little bit easier than our first two shows back from the pandemic. Fortunately, we did not have a big spike of any sort leading up to this show like we did with the first two, and that was very helpful in helping drive all of you here and getting all of you here in a much more simple and easy way. So thanks for being here. We'd also like to thank our more than 130 member companies and our nearly 40 sponsoring companies for their support this week, including Pacific Media Technologies. This clicker is not working. Yay, Pacific Media Technologies. We have Patrick Booker from PMT to say a few words here, and then we're going to share a video. So Patrick, welcome.
Well, welcome everybody to PDMI West 2022 on behalf of Pacific Media Technologies. As a founding member of PDMI and proud sponsor of this year's educational program, our company places a high value in the founding principles and mission of PDMI and its dedication to promoting and supporting marketing professionals in our industry. Through our alignment with PDMI, our company has established close bonds and partnerships with many of our fellow members. And we're excited to see our colleagues this week, again for the next 2 days, for a full agenda of collaboration, learning, and networking. We look forward to meeting all of the new members as well, and we invite you to stop by our table on the show floor to say hello to our team and get acquainted. And again, we welcome everybody and hope that you have a very informative and productive conference over the next 2 days. Thanks.
Thank you, Patrick. And again, thank you, PMT. PMT has also shared some videos with us that we're going to be playing at the start of each session. We'd like to watch the first one now.
I started PMT to apply the principles that I learned in the live television business to the DR delivery business. What makes PMT different is our people and their dedication to this industry. Quality is the key to what we do, and as the DR business changes, we'll be changing with it and we'll be ahead of the game.
Pacific Media Technologies. Technology driven, quality guaranteed.
Thank you, Bill, for that video. We'll see that video again here before the end of the show. So I'd like to welcome you to this first session today. This is presented by our e-commerce council. We have 5 councils at the PDMI, all of them very active. All 5 sessions today created by one of those councils. Greg Silvano of Buyist is our chair of the e-commerce council. We're not quite out of the woods yet with COVID and everything else. We're down a speaker. But we have a great conversation prepared for you here with Greg and Ron Steblea from Cannella Media. So take it away, gentlemen. Thank you.
Is my mic on? Good. All right, so I'm going to start. Obviously, we're down Jason, who's a key part here, but we're going to work around that, I think, pretty elegantly. I'm going to start by reading the description of this session because I think Tom did a great job, and it kind of sets the stage. So it's a story as old as marketing in the TV era itself, where once there were direct mail marketers who hit the wall of scale and needed a new outlet to grow their products and services to new levels. Now it's the array of wildly successful digital direct-to-consumer marketers who are finding roadblocks to scaling successfully, which is what this is all about. The answer then is the answer now. Ron, in one word, the answer is? TV. TV. Though the landscape of TV is shifting, it remains the lone outlet that can help e-commerce-based performance marketers overcome the final hurdles to scaling their businesses globally. So that's the goal of today's session, is to talk through that. So I'm going to speak for Jason. Jason and I spoke last week, and I'm going to speak for him because I think his role here is important. He's the CEO of a company called Core Health, so K-O-R-E Health. think it's corehealthofficial.com if you want to look it up. They are a fitness company. They have a few dozen products that are part of their brand. They can range anywhere from $50 to over $100. And they have grown to date solely through digital marketing. They have never done TV, and Jason admits that they've plateaued, certainly in certain media channels that they've plateaued over the years, and they do all digital marketing, so all different social media, email campaigns, things like that. So with that description, pretend that I'm Jason and I just described that. We can ease into the first question as if Ron had heard that. And my first question would have been, Ron, if as you hear that description of that type of company, that type of product, that type of price range, the length of the company, right? They've been doing this for years. It's not just some new thing. Is TV an option for them to start to scale? Should they consider TV?
What I would say is, like all good panels, hopefully by the end there'll be a lot more questions than answers, right? But I would say that what's interesting is take a little bit of a step back in the sense that I've been doing this for 25 years. I've been mostly on the marketing and product side of the business and not the agency side. And even in my career, I come from a print background where we used to do remnant advertising in Parade and USA Weekend. Anyone who's over 40 or 45 might remember when your credit card bill in the mail had a little bit of advertising in it. Switched to TV marketing, and as recently as 2007, kind of interestingly enough, I was thinking back that we tested TV spots without even having a website on them.
Right.
That's only 15 years ago. So no website on any of our TV tests. Fast forward to then retail becoming a big part, and then e-commerce, and then even think about where Facebook and TikTok were 5 years ago versus today. And I would say that the landscape's changing so quickly, there's no one easy answer. And the way we're doing things today isn't necessarily the way we're going to do things tomorrow or in 5 years. But that being said, having done this for a long time across a lot of products and a lot of categories and price points, I would say TV is still the single most efficient dollar you can spend of all media, and it is the one chance that we've seen many times with clients and partners that you have. If you've maxed out in other distribution or advertising channels, it is the one chance you have to scale.
Okay.
Significantly.
So what types of products or services or price points make sense for TV? And on the flip side, are there ones that just make no sense for TV? Like, for example, I have a $20 meatloaf pan. Are the TV days over for that type of product?
Never say never, but you don't see that kind of product selling today like
Why?
you did 10 or 15 years ago.
Why? What's changed?
I think it's a combination of the upfront investment per order is just too hard to get past. And if you don't have a huge back end, in a case like that, your back end is not going to be a continuity or persistency model. It's going to be retail, and there are very few people that can do that.
And even back in the day when there were $19, $19.99 meatloaf pans, the average order wasn't really $19.99, right? They were post-transaction upsells. So we get that order back up to $50 somewhere around there.
It's interesting you say that because I didn't think about that till you said it. But what's interesting is there's a famous test study from like 100 years ago where somebody advertised in print, and this is from a famous book if you know it, but they did $1 for the item and 10-cent shipping. And then they tested that against 10 cents for the item and $1 shipping. And so for 100 years, no one cared about shipping. And in the TV business 10 or 15 years ago, your $20 item would be a $70 average order with shipping and handling and upsells and things like that. But Amazon has completely changed that, right? Now if you get charged $2.95 for shipping, you're like, wait, all shipping should be free.
Right.
So it is true.
So 1999 days probably over for now. It's certainly harder. Okay, that's a better way of saying it. If you look at TV campaigns that you and Cannella are involved with today, are there categories or products that would work better on TV today? So I'll lead it with an example that I think is true. CBD products, things with continuity. Are those more the types of campaigns that are finding success on TV today, 2022?
I think when you talk about TV too, you have to talk about the different lengths. So a short form, a 1 or 2 minute commercial versus a mid form, like 3 and 5 minute commercial, which may be a hybrid, and then a long form 30-minute infomercial. Those could be very different.
Long form still happening?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, significant. And it's actually significant amount that you can spend, believe it or not, on mid-form and long form.
What's changed in the long form world? Is it cheaper to do those today, or is it still a very expensive production?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's probably like all media, it's all about efficiency, right? So it's all about how much does it cost relative to how many people are you reaching. So I used to say when we had a food item, people would say, do you run on food shows? And well, it all depended on how much they were charging for the media. So it wasn't necessarily that it had to be vertical to the programming. It was more about if they're asking me for $30,000 for something that I can afford $10,000 for, then I can't book it regardless of the content and how vertical it is. But I would say that for services are definitely a bigger part of it, of direct response, than they used to be. Like tax preparation fees, class action lawsuits, healthcare, open healthcare enrollment kind of lead gen stuff
instead of physical products.
Yeah, and then I think it's a lot more ingestibles and topicals or things that have a continuity, a back end. I think what you need is a back end, and so the back end historically.
So dive into that. What do you mean by back end?
Yeah, so a back end historically is one of two things. So the reason the meatloaf pan for $20 worked.
That's my example.
That's a real example.
I've been using that for 20 years.
That's a long time
10
ago,
years,
by the way.
We're selling meatloaf.
I forgot we used to be able to sell those. But, the back end for those type of products was retail. So you would get into all your big box retails and whatnot. And
so the end goal was retail. It wasn't to be on TV to sell it direct to consumer yourself.
Although 20 years ago you could make money on TV, so like it was a little bit different. Retail wasn't as big a part of it until probably 15 years ago, and then retail became a very big part of that. So I think what's also changed with retail is a lot of people know here, a lot of the retailers are suffering. Some of them that were very behind doing promotional sets are no longer behind promotional sets. So if you have a kitchen item like a meatloaf pan, you have to get into the destination of the retailer. So you have to go to a retailer. This isn't an absolute, but in general, it's better if you can go to a retailer who already sells kitchen items.
All right, so
that's one back end is retail. The other back end is continuity, or trying to get people to reorder multiple times.
So TV advertising is a means to an end. Okay, so let's start there. Bigger question. So TV advertising, if you saw a TV commercial for a product that somebody was selling in the past 10 years, let's say up until COVID, is the chance that that product, the purpose of that advertisement was to get that product in retail? That was the end game for the past 10 or 15 years, or am I misunderstanding
I think for direct response advertisers, yes.
Okay.
For the most part.
And has that changed? Right now, 2022, if retailers are having issues, if somebody's thinking about getting into TV, is it TV and they're 5 years behind on what's really happening in retail today, and maybe a TV campaign to get into retail doesn't make as much sense as it did before? Maybe that TV campaign has to sustain itself for a direct-to-consumer campaign, more so.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think what you're seeing is in those different lengths, you are seeing a push to have higher price points. I think that they, again, having some sort of way to generate some lifetime value out of the customer is very important. And if you don't have that, it certainly makes it harder to do the physical one-off $20 products.
So that actually lends into a question I was going to ask. Let's hop right into it. Let's say Jason, we'll say Jason's here, and he's like, I'm sold, I'm all in, let's do TV, it's going to be my path to scale. What does he need to consider before he goes down that path? So I'll seed it with a couple that I think are relevant. Supply chain, right? We're talking about scale, which means you could get in thinking that it's just, you're going to be able to handle it. But I would imagine that if you scale with what TV can potentially deliver, then it's going to take every little problem you have in your company, profit and loss, right? You're dealing with supply chain management, things like that, and make them, potentially threatening to the company. Is that a true assessment?
I think that...
Do you need to button those things down before you start going down the path of a TV campaign?
Yeah, for sure, issues such as profitability, having accurate P&Ls, having a well-managed supply chain are critical. I think that hopefully if somebody's already in the product business and they have an e-commerce business, they've already got that, to some extent. I do think that some of the things that you use your current team for in an e-commerce business will translate very well to the TV business. So if you you've got finance people, or you're running P&Ls, or you have marketing people who can understand what their return on investment is for advertising, then you're just talking about a different advertising channel. So those things I think translate very well. Supply chain management also. I think where you probably need help, additional help, is understanding the nuances of the new media channel, the TV, but also creative is probably a completely different proposition. What you're using
dive into that, yeah.
in digital and social is probably not going to translate well
So
to
they
TV.
have influencers. They have obviously Google Ads, things like that. Things that are text driven won't make sense, but they certainly have video, right? I mean, that's
Right.
Video's arguably the best converting digital advertisement that you're going to have. So video's not going to be foreign to them, right? It's not going to be a whole new concept they have to understand. But can they reuse that on TV?
Probably not. I would have, I would say in general, no.
Why?
Well, I think because I think video is critically important, and I think anybody who's in the marketing business knows that whether it's on Amazon or whether it's TikTok or YouTube, that video is the key part of advertising. And I think in the direct response world, it's especially important so you can explain the product. You can explain why your product might break through the clutter of competitive items. You might explain with a before and after, or those kind of things. You can get across some unique selling propositions that you might not get without the video, that you're not going to get from a static picture and some copy. That being said, I think that TV commercials have there's a very specific formula. Not that it can't be broken, but it's a decades-old formula.
Break it at your own risk.
Yeah, when you ask for money, right? And I don't know if everyone remembers, there's like a famous New Yorker article with Ron Popeil where he's watching some guys with like an onion chopper at a fair, and the guys aren't selling anything. And he asks them if he can do it for them. And he does it, and he sells like 30. And the inventors come over to him and say, but you didn't even use the product properly. And he said that, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, yes, but I know when to ask for the money.
Yeah.
And there's some
that's
truth
an
to
infomercial.
that.
I mean, they have a recipe. I mean, the layout of them.
I think that if you're a direct response marketer who's done it, you'd be afraid to go outside of that. I think that I'm all for creative testing, and maybe you A/B split, but I do think that also the lengths. I think that the videos that you're using in those other formats are 45 seconds or less, and 45 seconds is probably the longest. And so you're talking about with TV, you really need 60 or 120 seconds to do a direct response.
I would imagine that the tone of a TikTok video versus a Facebook video versus Instagram video is a different experience than a TV commercial. Like what you might accept while scrolling through TikTok, and you can flick through it if you don't like it.
Right.
You might not accept as a TV commercial that you can't scroll through. So I mean, I would imagine just that user experience means you can't use the same creative. Maybe just another argument to that.
Maybe.
That different user experience. Okay, so let's say Jason is right on script and he's saying, yes, I'm still in, by the way. What new roles does he have to consider? Right, so he's the CEO of the company, and let's say it's him, and he has a marketing team, and they clearly have had digital marketing experience. They have a digital marketing team, they have a marketing team, they have a creative team, clearly. They obviously have an e-commerce team. They have a Shopify store. I believe it's Shopify. They're going into TV. What entirely new roles that they've never been exposed to, whether it's internal or consulted or hiring another company we'll get into in just a second, what new roles are going to need to be addressed, or responsibilities would need to be addressed in order to do a TV campaign? So for example, TV production, right? Script writing, media buying, right? So if you don't know anything about this industry, you don't know anything about TV media buying, and in your experience maybe, what things might surprise somebody that they're getting into?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, probably every company is made up slightly differently, but I would say if you had a 7 or 8 figure e-commerce business that was advertising and buying product, or managing their supply chain, managing their P&Ls, then I don't think it's a heavy lift. I don't know that you necessarily need additional internal resources. It's probably more critical to find some outsourced companies you can work with, whether it's production companies or media agencies that can help you with those areas that you don't have the expertise in. But otherwise, I think your internal marketing people and creative people can work with those people as almost like executive managers.
You think some things should definitely be outsourced on the first campaign ever? I mean, should they go doing media buying on their own? Should they go do writing the script for a
it's
TV
good
commercial
question.
on their own?
You know, it's funny, when I talked about my career, one of the things is that a lot of the mistakes that I've made over the years have been hiring someone for a very specific skill set, and then 18 months later, that was no longer relevant to the company. So for example, you know, I'm not gonna name one, but let's say there's something that's important today.
But that person, right?
No, I mean like one of the social media platforms, let's say, you know, some of them, as we know, 2 or 3 years ago were.
Your big MySpace ads?
Yeah, you're right, exactly.
Was that me?
I don't know.
Sorry.
But yeah, so something like that, right? A MySpace specialist, right?
Yeah.
That's a good example. So I do think you need to be. I don't know if the in-house people in general have to be as. It depends how big you are, but as much a specialist as ability to manage a bunch of outsourced people. Because I think direct response. It depends what kind of product company you are. So in Jason's case, it sounds like if you have a lot of different products while they're all maybe fitness and health products, if you have some $59 like Fitbit type products and you're going to compete there, and you have a $500, $600 piece of exercise equipment, those could be 2 totally different approaches. So you might want your in-house team not to necessarily be a specialist in each one, but maybe be able to manage people that can help you that have experience in those areas.
One of the things I've noticed when people are new to direct response and they're doing their first campaign, even as an established company, is that the structure of an offer and knowing that you have to do, let's say, post-transaction upsells, downsells, try to get that average order up, and that you need to focus on a conversion rate first, right? Then get the average order up, play with the offer, things like that. I feel that when you get into TV and this direct response type of advertising, you are fully immersed in direct response advertising. It's not brand advertising anymore, right? I think it hits you hard just how many of those little decisions. And I've found that internal teams, they just don't have that way of thinking, right? It's almost kinder, gentler. You know, I don't want to do a "Are you sure?" upsell type thing. And I think when you do have somebody who's been in this industry that has done these types of campaigns in the past, it at least shows you what you don't know. Whether you choose to do it or not, it at least shows, yes, that was a great campaign. This is why that was a great campaign. You know, behind the scenes, it was working like this. So I think those could be pretty big. So, simple question.
Yeah.
Does calendar play into this at all? And I thought of this when we were talking about talking to Jason, where he's a fitness product. Okay, so time of year, does it matter on TV, or is it irrelevant? When we want to go, and that's it.
It's a good question. I mean, COVID has messed a lot of that up, right? The last couple of years, we all know as just, you know, people that have existed in this country the last couple of years that, you know, there were times when nobody was advertising, you know, travel companies or car companies or airlines, and so you had a huge chunk of media that was available that normally wouldn't be available. There are, and again, I think it goes back to the lens. I think for short form and long form, there are different times a year that are good or bad, better or worse, usually because of who else is advertising and what's available for direct response advertisers.
Do you have an example of that?
Well, an example would be like, historically in short form, you have the end of June and the end of December, you have the quarter changes to mid-year and the end of the year, where maybe some general advertisers have already spent what they want, and so they don't spend the last couple weeks of December. And so historically, as a direct response marketer, because you're getting media that's left over, you're not paying the rates that Mercedes or Pepsi Cola are paying, there would be more media and more efficient media available at those times. So I think it's different for short form and long form. That has to do more with media availability and efficiency. I think that then there's categories. So fitness, obviously, January, everybody knows, like, I'm looking at myself on the camera, like I need to probably talk to him about getting something. But January is when everyone makes their New Year's resolutions, right? And everybody gets back to working out. So historically, that's a good time for fitness. But I think also you got to factor in consumer spending. And I will say that in the last 12 months, I'm a little bit, doing this for a long time, I'm a little bit baffled by the trends of consumer spending. And I think a lot of it has to do with maybe when we go back 24 months, maybe those months weren't so good. They were just good because of COVID. And so it's changed a little bit, the approach. But so I think it's probably a combination of those three things. And so what I would say to you, though, is, and I hope this is coming across the right way, but I think if anybody tells you that they have figured out how something works and they have the secret solution, I think that's nonsense, because it's changing every day and nobody really knows how certain things work, like Amazon, for example. I don't think people who work at Amazon know how it works, right? So then you add on top of that, and so not only that, but there can't be one approach to every product. And so like you've given me a few examples, there could be 5 products from Jason that would actually have to have 5 different approaches. One would be a short form lead gen, one would be a long form, you know, at a maybe you could do it at like an introductory price. And then I think if you do rely on a back end, like a continuity or a trial offer, there's probably going to be a very different value to a customer that comes from TV, that comes from TikTok, that comes from Facebook, that comes from Google search.
Which would lend itself to the discussion that the communication between the team that's doing the direct response campaign and the back office, I mean, has to be pretty tight to make those kind of decisions, right?
Yeah, the more
adjustments.
And I think the more you can keep it objective, right? Yeah. So it's one of these things where if it's your baby, you're the inventor and you've lived it, it's sometimes hard to deal with the reality of the results. And I think when you're someone who's done it for a lot of years and you have hundreds of products, you don't get emotionally tied to the products. I always say, like, in my life, I feel like a 11th century British farmer who like had 19 kids and hoped 11 would live to work the farm.
I had no idea where that was going.
Yeah. So that's a famous quote of mine. But it's true. There's some, we got 11. That made it.
Timmy's still strong.
But I do think that the more you can accept the reality of the numbers, and the more that you can, I guess, kind of be careful about when you move from platform A to B to C that the certain metrics that you relied on that were happening in A might not happen in B. So and maybe you retarget.
And then you have the politics, right? Because the team that was managing A is all of a sudden saying, no, these are better orders. So, it gets complicated. Okay, so let's say we haven't scared away Jason yet.
It's easy with him not here.
So he's all in. He wants to go. He's the CEO, he has a marketing company, he has all this stuff. When it comes to a TV campaign, okay, so let's say they were doing a new TikTok campaign, he's not that involved, right? He doesn't have to be that involved. That's an engine that's kind of running. TV is something new to them. What would you tell him would be what he could expect in the first month of this? Let's go, we're gonna do this, and there's production, there's decisions that need to be made. For him and his team, how much work is that in addition to their current 40 to 50 hour work week, right? So is this a whole company needs to pivot on this and start thinking about it and head in this direction, or is it, we're gonna need some of your time, let the professionals do their work?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I would say, again, maybe every situation could be slightly different, but I would say for a company such as his, without knowing a lot about it, but if he was already had like I said, the creative, the marketing, the supply chain, then it's not a heavy lift. It's not a lot of time because you have the agency and production companies and whatnot that are going to help you along. So I think you need a little bit of time to have that kind of collaboration. But I think if you find the right partner, they'll do that heavy lifting for you because they're doing it hundreds of times.
Right.
And even though it's not one formula or one size fits all, there still is a certain, we need to get production done, we need to get a media plan, and do it. You have to find out what their budget is, what their expectations are.
What's a realistic time frame? Somebody who's never done TV before, which is how I preface every question here, right? Somebody who's never done TV, they're thinking about it. If I decided, or Jason decided I want to do TV, is he on air in November? Is he on air in March?
Well,
what's the reality?
I would say that it's funny, this question goes back to lengths as well. If it's going to be a 2-minute commercial or less,
sure.
It depends on what, but I'd say within 2 months, 60 days, you could probably have a commercial shot up, tested,
media bought,
and all that. I mean, it could be faster, but that's probably best case scenario. I think if it's a 30-minute long infomercial, those are usually a heavier lift on the creative side.
Okay.
So that could be 3 months, 6 months, or
Okay. I would imagine the next biggest misconception or unknown going through Jason's mind would be, What's a media test like? What is that process like? You know, is it, hey, we got our commercial, we're done, let's air it and magic happens? Or is it more of a ready, fire, aim?
Yeah, I think when you're a company, I think there's a big difference between a company who is a direct-to-consumer marketing company who's testing multiple products a year with the hope that they have a numbers game where we'll test 20 and hope 3 or 4 work. Then I think the budgets and the maybe commitment to the product isn't as great because it's like we don't, again, it goes back to the 11th
It's
century.
not a grand slam.
I don't know why I picked 11th century, but it made sense. But it goes back to the 11th century, you know, idea that well, some are gonna work, some are not gonna work. But if it's my baby or it's my core business, then I would say the budgets should definitely be higher, you know, and I think that you probably don't wanna do a 1-week test and be done. You might wanna think up front about not only multiple weeks, but maybe multiple offers or even times of year.
Does it help him that he has an established company with products and offers in digital marketing and they know which one the hero product is and which ones sell better? That's a lot different than if you are a company that just cranks through products trying to find one that resonates, right? So
yeah,
that probably gives him a little bit of
I would think so. I mean, there might be some things that don't translate, like you say, like for example, in his case, because it's fitness and health, it probably does, but we have a partner, for example, who sells handmade candles made in your neck of the woods, and it's great, but I don't think that's a TV product, right? I don't think people are going to get to it. There's so many.
Actually, let's go into that. Why?
Yeah.
Price?
Low price,
global appeal?
lots of competition.
Okay.
You know, you have, it's nothing, there's no real problem solution. There's no real unique selling problem. I mean, you can have something unique about it, but it's
not demonstrable. It's not, here's a problem,
right.
This solves the problem, thus go buy it right now.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's say he's all ready to go. He clearly has an Amazon presence. He has a Shopify site, right? He has an established presence out there already. What adjustments, what does he need to do to those when TV runs?
Well, that's a good question. It's interesting you say that because I newly have been in the Amazon business for about 4 years and always liked it as a consumer, obviously. Now I don't even go to the store to get batteries, right? Like, they can be here tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Why would I go? But I think that the strategy for a direct response marketer or a product marketer with Amazon can differ. There are people that will avoid Amazon altogether, and I think that can be an effective strategy depending on your product. And that could be mainly because you have a back end where you know you can get the person to stay for 8 months, so maybe you don't want them going on Amazon, where the best you can do is the subscribe and save, which you don't even control.
You have no control.
Amazon controls that.
Okay.
So I think that that's not as efficient a way to build a lifetime value. So I think there can be a strategy to either not be on Amazon at a totally different offer or price, or
would it be
do
a
the same
higher
thing.
price on Amazon?
I think a lot of people
guide
will do
people
that.
to the store.
Yeah. So I think that's, but I think also the landing, so Amazon is a part of, like, you'd have to, on a product by product basis, decide what strategy do I want to use Amazon? How am I going to use Amazon in my overall marketing strategy with this TV campaign? And I do think that the landing page is critical. Okay. So what we typically have done recently is we'll have 2 different landing pages. We'll have a Shopify site, and that'll be our normal transactional shopping cart with a lot of different products. And then we'll have what we call a hero site, where it's just the TV offer, and it's probably much simpler with the product and offer. And the conversions on those sites can be 10 times greater. And you can't live with the other conversion.
With a 1.5% conversion rate. So that kind of lends itself to the attribution side of things. So digital marketing, in theory, is easier to do attribution, right? The internet and clickable links are inherently trackable. Obviously, with multi-channel campaigns, it's more difficult. Is it last click attribution, things like that. However, TV is a whole different beast. I mean, you could, in theory, have a national campaign with the same commercial running at the exact same time across the country. What do you do?
Attribution's a tough one. I will tell you,
In 30 seconds,
What-
explain TV
What
attribution.
the agency would want me to say, and what I would say as a marketer, could be two different things, right? So I think if agencies tell you that they can attribute 80 or 90% of those orders that come onto your website, I just don't think that that's possible.
Right.
Just like going into a car dealer, they don't really know what advertising was, it billboards or TV or print ads.
little bit of every one of them,
Why
right?
did you walk into Mercedes? You know, they don't really know, and they're not that worried about it. But I think that you need two things, I think. One is, if you can, you know, it sounds terrible, but I'm still surprised by the percentage of orders we'll get on phone.
Really?
So a phone number on the right product and offer can obviously help you with attribution,
So dive into that for a
because you'll have a
second.
different phone number for every network. So on TV, that will help.
Okay, so it's always the same domain, even though it's a hero
Right.
domain, buy, try, get,
So if you
product,
can
something
get
like that.
30% there, and then, you know, like in our case, and probably most agencies, we have a data science business intelligence team that has built an attribution model. So I think that, you know, with QR codes and with
Do you see
phone
QR
numbers.
codes a lot?
Yeah, I think with QR, my personal experience so far has been that QR codes help you more with attribution than they do with any incremental response.
Yep, okay.
You know, I don't think you're necessarily getting more
I mean,
orders.
it's a phone number-like identifiable thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
somebody does the QR code, you know exactly what commercial airing at what time.
That's me.
Oh, it is you.
Yeah, that one is. I think if you have phone numbers, I don't know if you need the QR codes. I think the QR code would be more if, like, we did a test recently on something that was over $200 and got no phone. So on the subsequent test, we'll do QR codes just so we can have some attribution, but we won't redo the phone number.
So let's take Jason's case. It's fitness, right? It's I would imagine, you know, it spans the age of 20-year-olds to 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds. I don't know what the branding is. Might skew younger than that. What would your default thought be or recommendation be for having a phone number on that campaign?
Yeah,
Is it put a phone number and, you know, by default, and we'll kind of remove it if we don't need it, or is it, you know, there are certain cases where you should have a phone number and forget it?
It probably depends on the product, but I'd probably say if it's, you know, I think there's a lot of, I think those kind of products, especially if they have higher priced pieces of equipment, I think a phone number would actually be what I would start with.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. IVR, live agent, doesn't matter?
If it's high price, probably live agent.
Okay.
I mean, it costs a lot more, but it depends what your conversions are.
Okay.
I think it's a good question. I think that that's changing a lot, but it's not changing as much as I think the myth is that it's changing. Like people say people don't watch TV. That's not true. People say people don't order on the phone. That's not true.
Since the day I got into this industry, people have been talking about the death of TV, that it is dying. And I think, I mean, this is a tangent, but I mean, COVID definitely showed that there's plenty of life in it. You know, maybe that's an extreme case, but you know, the scale of TV was what happened during COVID in a very short period of time. Actually, I'll give a story of what happened with us. So quarantine started in March, right? The end of the first week of March. By 10 days later, sales through our platform went up 403%. So in the span of 10 days, all sales, clients, you know, averaged 403%. In the month of April, there was one client, obviously I can't name them or the product, but in the month of April, there was one client who had the #1 product in sales across the whole platform. And they had twice the sales of number 2. Okay, so in a sea that had risen 400% for everybody, this one product was twice as much as the second one. Here's the thing, on April 1st, they had $0 in sales. And on May 1st, they had $0 in sales. And this company just happened to have a commercial that was years old, and they had product that they had intended to shred and melt. It was sitting in warehouses, and they just couldn't do anything with it. So they kind of threw it out on TV one day just to see if there's any pulse to it. And when they saw the response, they just hit the accelerator as fast as they could until they sold them out. And the scale of TV on that, in the span of less than 28 days, it was staggering to see. And they could not have done that in any other medium. There's no way. All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, tangent there. Sorry.
Yeah.
Good story though.
But I think
Okay.
attribution, to your point, attribution is really important, and how you do it is important. And I think that you do the best you can with attribution. And I think that, but with TV, I do think that it's probably a lot easier. Again, it goes back to lengths. The long form is probably a lot easier to do it on than the short form.
Okay. And I would imagine that part of that attribution is there's a lift everywhere, right? If you are
Absolutely,
on Amazon,
yeah.
you have a Shopify site, it's not like everybody's going to end up going to the microsite, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I was actually talking to a fellow marketer from a direct response company, and he was telling me, "Oh, I don't know why you can't make, TikTok or YouTube work the way I make it work." I'm like, "You're spending $300,000 a week on TV, so everything's working."
Of course it works.
YouTube, Facebook, everything. It's like the old, the rising tide lifts all the boats, and it's really true. We see that on a lot of clients where your digital and social will take off just because you're running TV.
So let's say it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Why, in your experience, does a product that did show signs of life before, right? So let's say Jason has a product and they're doing great with digital marketing. It's no guaranteed success that TV is going to work for them. Are there any real obvious reasons that you've seen in the past why that happens, or is it just too specific?
I would tell you that I'm constantly surprised by what works and doesn't work.
Really?
And so it's hard to say, I think, before and after why.
Yeah.
I think that's just pure speculation.
Could be timing of the product. I mean, there was...
Well, people know, like my old company, we did the Snuggie, and I was there during the Snuggie days. And the week we tested the Snuggie, we tested another product, and it was a product that Don Imus had on his show for a long time, and that didn't work. No one knows what it is. And the Snuggie did work, but I remember seeing the Snuggie commercial before we tested it, thinking, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen." Right? People are wearing a fleece blanket around the fire. They're wearing it at a college football game, and then 2 months later, I was at a college football game in Connecticut. It was
They're
freezing,
actually wearing
and
it?
people were wearing them in the stands. I was like, "Oh, that's crazy."
It's really funny.
So I would say that there's some luck involved, and I don't know
Right.
100%. I wouldn't say it's luck to make it work. But why something does and doesn't work, it could be the creative, it could be the time of year. And then the question is, what's your tolerance for going back to the well with your budget?
Right,
So if you invested
exactly.
$100,000 in a test and we
Right.
think that the creative wasn't as good or the maybe media wasn't as efficient, would you go back?
Yeah.
And if you just have to do more more media, that's not terribly expensive.
Right. But if you have
you
to
need to go
reshoot
back to the
things,
creative.
yeah.
So hopefully you've worked along where, and again, if you're not emotionally tied to it, you say, "We like the creative, we like the offer, we think this is a good media plan, and therefore if it doesn't work, we kind of did our best," and maybe you test a little bit more.
So that actually brings up a really good point. We hadn't discussed it before. So one of the things that we tell clients is leave room for testing. Right? So the clients that succeed in e-commerce, in our experience, are ones that they don't just spend months getting every pixel right on the website, and they blow their entire budget
Right.
getting it right, and then they launch it and they think, it's launched, we're done. Right? The professionals, they launch a site as quickly as possible, and then they drive traffic to it, and then expect to drive more traffic. They learn some lessons, and then they leave budget for more media. I would imagine for TV, you should have a similar mindset. I mean, it's more expensive, as you just said, but if you have, if you're just planning on spending $5,000, $10,000 in media and being done, I'm out, I'm either going to learn or not, you're not going to have room to make any adjustments, which are probably necessary. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I would say it's interesting you said that, because I would say that with digital and retargeting and all the different things that people do, understanding how you're going to work that back end is pretty important up front. But I would say on TV, if you don't get the upfront response, there's nothing that's going to help you on the back
So
end.
the phones have to ring first.
Yeah, and so it's pretty easy. I mean, it's pretty easy to see something that didn't work and did work. It's
Yeah.
the stuff that's in the middle that's a little harder.
So you can tell, let's say that you ran media, and you ran TV commercials, and you got 10,000 visitors to your website, but a very low conversion rate. It's not a fail, right? I mean,
Right.
it shows that there's a problem with the website, right? But at least you got them to come to the website the first time. So there are plenty of lessons to be learned as you're going down that path.
Yeah, in that case, you're right. You could work on, hey, I got the traffic, I need to work on conversion. If
Right.
8 people visited the site
And all of
you
them bought it, it doesn't matter that it's 100% conversion rate, because there's not enough people
and you're
in
like,
that
there
pool.
just weren't enough people home.
So let's say the test fails. Okay, so that's they're out. They're not going to do TV. Completely lost investment at that point, or are there reusable parts of this? I mean, do you find companies that go in, it doesn't work, they pull out? Do you see that they're using that commercial in social media, or using it elsewhere, or maybe using that marketing copy?
Maybe that's one of the things that's better about having a TV investment or trying a TV test than it used to be is that video or that creative content that you created. And you can certainly go into your production with that in mind, where you're going to do a bunch of things that could lend themselves to shorter formats in digital, social, et cetera. But I think that can be cut down and used in multiple ways. We see that all the time.
Whereas 20 years ago, you couldn't.
Yeah,
right? You
then
had
it
no
was
place
over.
to use that video.
Right.
Today, you have 1,000 places to use it.
That's right.
I oversold that. 12 places to use that video.
That's true. Yeah, so it's not lost.
Does TV help with branding as well? Everything that we do is direct response, right? So I ran a commercial. How many people bought this product because of this commercial? And you're trying to get people to buy that product, or service, or get their lead, their contact information, or something like that. When you do that in the digital world, it truly is direct response. Can you build a brand digitally versus, or is it easier to build a brand and actually, while doing direct response on TV, are you building a brand as well? So I mean, maybe even if the direct response part of it isn't what you expected, there's still built some brand out of that. Is that a reasonable assumption, or am I
think
completely making
the
that up?
idea of having a brand and any kind of intellectual property, protection is more important than it ever has been. So I think even if it depends what the definition of a brand is. Like, there's obviously a big difference between a brand that's been around for 75 years and spent hundreds of millions of dollars that everybody knows as a household name versus a TV product that did really well that people might kind of know, versus even just something you're doing on Amazon. Maybe you're doing $2 or $3 million a year, but if you don't have a trademark, for example, or brand registry, so let's say you had an item that was a $20 meatloaf pan, right? And you had an Amazon business that was a couple $1 million. If you don't have your trademark and brand registry, it limits the type of advertising and the things you can do on the Amazon platform, and minimizes the size that your business can be.
Yeah.
So I think whether it's that extreme example or going up to like Procter & Gamble, I think branding on some level has got to be a pretty important consideration up front.
Okay. Tom, this will be my last question, just because I think we're hitting the 10-minute mark. So we're going to go back to Tom's description of this, right? He said, this is direct mail originally, so what was his phrase here? It's a story as old as marketing in the TV era itself, where there were once direct mail marketers who hit the wall. Now it is digital marketers, right? Direct to consumer and e-commerce. At the end of the day, TV, it's still marketing, right? It's still advertising, it's still marketing. Has it changed? I mean, are the fundamentals the same as they were 100 years ago when it was postcards in the mail?
If you go back to,
You can go back to the 1800s.
You've been to Stockbridge? Have you ever been to Stockbridge?
Yes.
Like Norman
Yeah, of course.
Rockwell,
Yeah.
Stockbridge, Massachusetts. Everyone's been to Western Mass. Like, there's the Red Lion Inn. You ever been there?
Yeah.
So the Red Lion Inn had, I don't know if they still do, but in their pub downstairs, their wallpaper is all newspapers from the 1890s.
That's cool.
And all the ads are, does your husband snore? Do you need to lose weight? Are you going bald? Do you need to grow hair? Do you need to get rid of hair? Right? So the categories, it's 100, what I always tell people is, in my 25 years in it, it's changed a lot. But this is a 130, 170-year-old direct response business. And so the fundamentals are all the same. The product categories are the same. There are differences, like the free shipping example I gave before with Amazon. But I think the fundamentals are the same for direct response marketing, and you just have to interpret those into these new distribution or marketing channels, which isn't that difficult to do. I think the TV has changed a lot. Everybody think about how they consume content. Even me, I'll spend a lot more time streaming than watching traditional, cable or satellite TV. However, that doesn't mean that, again, you can't spend a lot of money and that it's not hyper efficient to have TV. And I will tell you that I've seen a couple of people that were in the, let's say, like $10 million a year range on a pure e-commerce
digital
program. And I think in one case we were able to increase their Facebook spending 20 times. And that took them
because
from
of the TV campaign.
No.
Oh, okay. Before.
Yeah, no TV.
I got it. Okay.
But that took them from 10 to 14 million.
Okay.
And the other one, TV worked, and that took them from 10 to 40 million.
Wow.
So I think if you're in that 5 to 15 or $20 million, $30 million e-commerce only business, and you want to grow that significantly, and you've maxed out what you're doing, TV is a great option if you have all the right products and offers. I think to come up with the meatloaf pan as an inventor and shoot a commercial and do it, that's a 1 in X, success rate, and that's harder to do.
Yeah.
And that's why you typically have the big marketers that historically did that, that would test 30 or 40 products a year, and I don't know that they're doing that anymore.
But they had the money and the experience to do it, right? I mean, that's
and retail was made everything work.
right.
So
Right.
you went up and said, I could lose X on TV, and then I know I'm going to sell this many units at retail, and so
Yep.
overall the equation, the math works.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Those days are different.
I'm not in that now, so I don't know. But I can tell you, I'm sure everyone here knows that I don't remember the last time I saw a Snuggie or Pillow Pets or something like that was I would see 50,000 times a week on TV.
On TV, yeah.
I don't see those kind of ads anymore. They
Yeah.
tend to be different types of offers, not
Although
$20.
during COVID,
Right.
you did, yeah.
Well, and to your
Because they
example,
pulled
I know
out.
of that from a few friends where I asked some people, well, how did you run that? We stopped running that 14 years ago. They were like, I don't know. It
just
worked during COVID. And they blew through their inventory. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right, man.
Nice job.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, we got everybody.
Questions for Greg and Ron? We have about 10 minutes. Anyone have a question? Oh,
Right
here
behind.
we go.
Rich Davidson from Truly Clear. If retail is the back end or was the back end, is continuity the new back end?
I think continuity's always been a big part of the back end for decades. It depended on the product. I think what you're seeing now is that people who shied away from doing like topicals or ingestibles are doing more of that now, and those companies I think they have a bigger share of the direct response business than they did 20 years ago. But even 20 or 30 years ago, I think that was still a pretty big part of the back end, depending on the product.
There's another part of that too, where 10 years ago it was get new customer, wait 8 weeks to ship it, and if they get annoyed, who cares, right? You can't do that with continuity. You just can't do that with social media and people complaining about it and actually having an audience out there. So I think the fact that continuity and a back end is important with today's campaign, I think it goes hand in hand with the fact that we need to be taking care of our customers better than we ever have before, because it's that relationship that allows for the continuity. The days of, well, I'll just get another 100,000 people to buy my meatloaf pan next month, they just don't happen anymore.
If you're old enough to remember the 13 DVDs for a penny, and then you could never figure out
Columbia House.
Well, I didn't say it, but you could never figure out how to cancel.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
brilliant. I was like, there's no information. How do I get in touch with these?
Very true. Yeah.
You can't do that today.
And actually, so I'm, just to finish that off, Rich, what I have personally seen in the past 10 years is a higher sophistication of the marketers who are running these campaigns. It's not, I have this great product, I'm just going to cram this down the throat of America and sell as many as I can. It's people who understand the value of these customers from now on. They have email campaigns going, and they have this drip campaign, a nurture campaign for their next product that's coming. That it costs you how much to get that first 10,000 customers? Well, now you have those 10,000 customers to help you launch your second product, right? And I think that sophistication is kind of built into the campaigns that are running today, which lends to the continuity side of things.
What is a minimum spend that you would recommend to a client when they're coming into TV?
That's a good question. I think it depends a lot on
The
again
length,
the
right?
length,
The length.
but also what kind of marketer are you? Do you have? Is this a part of a? Do you have multiple products you're going to test? Do you have a single product? But I think there are people that would tell you 5,000 is enough. I don't think that's even close. I think if you're a company that's doing 50 tests a year, then that's probably okay to use that almost as a filter to see which products you should then spend more on. But I would say somewhere in the $25,000 is the minimum, for each length. But I'd say for long form, you probably want even a little bit more.
What would a long form cost today, do you think?
To produce?
To produce,
It's a
yeah.
good, I don't know.
You don't know?
I think the ones that are doing it in
Are they hundreds of
professional
thousands
are
of
millions
dollars?
of dollars.
Really?
You
Okay.
know? But I do think you could do one for hundreds of thousands. And I think that, like for example, like we because we do a lot in-house, we'll offer, I mean, I think that there are ways to partner with people that you can do it at a more reasonable rate.
Sure.
And that's something that like we try to do. We try to help people out as a partner by offering that as an in-house service to make it a little more affordable.
There's a few producers in the audience that can answer that question, like me. Ed.
Yeah, I don't want to.
We can tell you
undersell
exactly
you
what it
guys.
costs.
Yeah.
So I think you already answered this question, but great panel, great job, you guys. Where in the roadmap of a digital marketing product or service should digital marketers start thinking about TV? You know, is it when they get that Amazon and e-com click-in in multiple marketplaces? Is it, you know what I'm saying? So like,
That's a
when
great
in the
question,
roadmap, what other channels should they have first to get the biggest impact of the big reach of TV?
It's a good question. I would say,
Right to you.
I would say there's no one answer for every situation, but I don't think you can do TV early enough, because I do think it will help all those other things be successful. So I don't think you need to wait. If you have the right product and the right offer and the right...
So the offer is the key thing there,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, there is a level. It's not, hey, we just have some sales on Amazon.
Right.
You should be figuring out the right offer that's getting you the most sales, because that should be cheaper for you to test than rerunning a bunch of TV media. You know, is it really 4 payments of $49.95, or is it, or it's something like that?
I'll
right?
give
So
you
if you
an
could flush those out before TV.
Yeah. I'll give you an example without naming the product. There's somebody did a distressed offer, like a low offer to try to get somebody in, but they decided to leave their Amazon at full price, which was a very significantly higher price. And the 2 weeks they did the TV test, their Amazon was a huge percentage of the overall and was better than they ever did on Amazon without the TV, and it was 4 times the price
Which
that they could
nobody
get
saw
on
coming,
TV,
right?
because people trust Amazon. They know they'll get it tomorrow. They know their credit card's good,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so it, you know, so that helped right away. So I think that I would say if you have the right product, do the TV right away.
Got time for one more if you want. Oh, here we go. Last
What about
one.
Vic Golio? He said he had a question.
Just to piggyback on the prior question about budgets for testing on linear, with so much more TV stations on air now, with the audience being fragmented, does that affect your initial testing budget as well as the length of the test, just because there's so many stations to test? And how would you approach that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that it does come down to the budget. I think that doing it over multiple weeks is better, and you cast as wide a net as you can at the beginning. I think that, again, it really does go back, though, to what's efficient media. And so being part of an agency now, from a marketing perspective, and seeing what people are spending and where they're having, I think if you have that internal knowledge of what's working where, which media is efficient, which price points and categories work in different media, then that's how you construct your test. Because I think that most people don't test a second time if it doesn't work. So getting the first test constructed correctly is critical for both the agency and the client. And if you don't do that, very rarely are you going to get a second chance.
And is each test...
And nobody makes any money on the test, right? So that's not where you make any money.
And is each test significantly different than the test prior to, from brand to brand, company to company? I mean, it's not, hey, here's a first test of a fitness product, let's do these 6 things, and it's always the same 6 things. Does it vary a lot?
I think that you could have some similarities, again, like in product categories. So if you have some long form media that's working on fitness products, then obviously that would be a good indicator of what might work on a new fitness product in long form.
Okay.
So I do think you can use that intelligence to do that. So not everything's the same, but probably they can be very similar.
Okay.
Great. Well, how about a round of applause for our tremendous panel? You guys
was 2
flew in.
people.
Go ahead.
He was 2 people.
Yeah, you guys kind of flew in missing
He
man
should have moved
formation
seats.
here.
He should have gone
switch
back and
seats,
forth.
But yeah, thank you guys. We'll be back here at 11 with an update on the regulatory landscape, very active regulatory landscape and performance marketing, and we'll see you then. Thank you.
All right, thank you.